Hello, 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 hello. Welcomes, people. Come and join us. The talk hasn't begun yet, but I can already feel it's gonna be a good one. Just waiting for our friend George to join. Yes, I like this.
Howdy, partner.
Hey, hey.
Thank you. How you doing?
I'm good.
Fantastic.
I don't want to give
Fantastic.
someone advertising by showing the right side of it, but I've decided to get the wrong side of it. That's a lot better. Do you know how you had your phone before, like pointing
Yeah.
towards,
Was it a bit much?
like
I
that bit?
apologize.
This is better because beforehand, hi
Yeah.
guys, thank you for joining. Because beforehand it was like it was a little bit too white near your face, but
Okay. Yeah, no, sorry. So basically, just to let everyone know, I'm currently in the studio right now. I just found what's it called? A fire exit stairwell. So I'm using the fire exit stairwell. But I'm really happy to have this conversation with you because I think it's about time, first and foremost. We have known each other for a very long time, for those who don't know.
we have known each other for a very long time, and I like to kick it off with a little bit of a discussion about
Yeah,
how
no,
people are feeling, how people are doing, and all that stuff. But
absolutely.
let me just load something on. I think this is the correct video.
I'm going to try and make sure my phone doesn't fall out there. There it is. Oh, good old days. Fun. So this night
Oh, I'm just taking it
was,
down.
it was Vogue Fashion Night Out.
That's it.
It was
You're
Vogue Fashion Night
correct.
Out. Yeah, it was a bit of a crazy evening. I think we had 600 people show up to a venue that had a capacity of 90. Literally, the venue had a capacity of 90, and we had 600 people show up, and it was a bit insane, but it was
But the
one of my
space is
favorite.
so
It was also my
huge.
birthday.
You wouldn't get away with it
No,
now.
no. In this day and age, not at all. There's no venue that would ever even allow that kind of ridiculousness behavior to happen. But yeah, back then we
Ridiculousness.
had,
That behavior. Well, shall we like get it to the teeth of things? I would like to start off with just a
yeah.
little bit of a discussion about, the general shit, like
Mm-hmm.
who you are and all that stuff. But
All right.
beforehand,
Cool.
I would like to welcome our audience. Welcome, audience.
Hi,
Nice
friends,
to see
family.
everyone.
Good to see you
Um,
all.
it's been a while. Uh,
That it has.
yeah, it has been a
That it
while.
has.
But today's discussion is going to center around being a creative producer,
Yes.
looking at nightlife, looking
Yeah.
at everything that kind of falls out of nightlife, which is a
Yeah.
complete, you know, everyone thinks Bohemia is where the devil lives, apparently. But I found that nightlife is somewhere where you can actually make friends, real friends,
Yeah.
like us. We're
Yeah.
friends,
Absolutely.
and
I
we've been
think a
friends
lot of
for a
people
while.
socially and culturally have kind of gotten into this thing as to where nightlife friends are carried through in life. But actually, a lot of the relationships I built and cultivated have happened within nightlife.
Mm. And that in itself is a real noticeable trait of nightlife, that it attracts people from all different social stratas,
Yeah.
and it also forges relationships that are very unlikely.
Yeah.
The most unlikely relationships will form. So you get a street kid from whatever part of London meeting a multimillionaire from
Yeah.
whatever part of the world, because you can
Yeah.
never say they are
Yeah.
Londoner because they usually say,
Mhm.
but that's the beauty of nightlife because it
Yeah, I
levels
think
the playing field.
yeah, I think what was great about the times when I was being a promoter and working in a lot of London establishments that were very Mayfair, very bougie, we'll just call it that. Um, there was a class system always in place, but what I was really lucky, and I think a lot of the friends that I have were blessed, is that I never allow that to be a thing. Do you know what I mean? There was no hierarchical classes within my event. And any venue that I was working with to understand what the show currently was the vibe. It was creating the vibe, and that people could mix and enjoy a space together, and it'd be an actual real party, it'd be a real energy, it'd be nightlife church, so to speak. You know?
Nightlife church, I totally get it. And I really enjoyed the fact that as Londoners, we were being we were being
Yeah,
allowed into these environments, or we had the purchase
yeah,
to enter these hallowed halls, whereas
yeah.
previously they hadn't been seen as places that you could step foot in unless you knew someone, etc., etc.,
Hmm.
etc. But
Hmm.
let's start with the story from the beginning. Give us an
Okay.
idea of how George started, because
All
you
right.
said that you were a bit precocious, used to go out.
Yeah. There's a couple stories that kind of intertwine and interlink my story. Right? That I would say I'll start with 2017. No, 2007. I had a girlfriend at the time who introduced my world to race. I had no idea about it, didn't know what it was, I had no idea. And she took me to my first meeting.
Your
Jumped
your
back
microphone's a
to
bit muffled, George. Is it covered by anything?
no, should be fine. Can you hear me?
Can hear you better now.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I'll say the year was 2009 that I started realistically.
And here we go.
I remember the one thing I remember about punk is that it was popular within the newspapers. There was always somebody, some celebrity rolling out of punk. It was usually Rihanna or anybody who was hot at that time. And I remember being really, really interested because I wanted to get into music. I wanted to understand intersectional culture that I wasn't a part of. And they always advertised themselves as metrosexual evenings. And that term back then meant something in between cosmopolitan and queer. Do you know
Okay.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what the term metrosexual meant at the time. So, and I was really interested in that. I was like, I don't come from that world. Yeah, involve me, invite me in. So I started hosting tables with friends.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically meant that you just got to jump the queue, get a table, bring your friends in for free, drink for free. And that's what was hosting at the time. Until it became real hardcore promoting, which was having numbers and social currency and being the plug for
Yeah.
people to get the club. Safe to say I never did the street promotional game. It wasn't for me. But yeah, that's how I started off in 2009, just kind of posting tables. Went off to uni, came back in, let's say, 2011, and that, what you see behind you, is the place where I ended up after kind of securing certain clubs like Club Hotel.
Amazing. So we usually see nightlife as a way of just losing yourself.
Yeah,
Would you say that nightlife has helped you find yourself?
absolutely. Absolutely. I think, okay, firstly, you have to lose yourself to find yourself. Do
Mm.
you know? So, yeah, maybe there was times, especially within 2009, just after the recession, there were no jobs. There was maybe there was a couple of things here and there, but nothing that I had a real penultimate interest in. Especially if your focus isn't making money, it's about trying to build a career, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing out there that I can remember. So nightlife was a way for me to kind of use whatever skills that I had and meet people and try to gain work within certain fields that I was interested in.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, nightlife was a playground for culture. It was a playground to find different job opportunities, in fact, directly, let alone the bigger idea of what nightlife industry means to me. It was that, and that's how I started out. And I actually don't think I would have been able to do half the things I've been able to do if it wasn't for the nightlife industry.
I really cannot iterate how important it is when you're starting out as a creative to be involved in a scene, even if it's, you know, casual coffee dates
Yeah,
with friends,
yeah,
you know, the non-alcoholic, the really soft stuff. You just have to
hmm
be in the room.
yeah,
And it's important that you are in a room because people start to notice you, and then they start
yeah,
to acclimatize themselves to you, and
and
ultimately
gravitate.
they'll gravitate. They will find you, and they
Yeah,
will then want to work with you if they find
yeah,
you, you know, amenable,
reliable.
reliable. But reliability comes off before. No, it comes after amenable. If they find you
It
nice,
does, yeah. Yeah,
you have to
it's
make them
amenable
nice,
first, and then
and then
you're
it'll prove that
acceptable.
you're reliable.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you end up in a position where it's a little bit hit and miss. Let's just put it that way.
Mm, mm,
But
mm.
let's talk about the experiences of losing yourself.
Yeah, so as I said, I was in a time there was a recession going on.
Yeah.
There wasn't many jobs available. And if there's anything that we've spoken about, is how generationally each generation through strive creates innovation. And I think my version of innovation was understanding that networking is really important
Mm-hmm.
within the creative industry,
Yeah.
understanding that meeting these people, I'm not going to always find on the job if there's no jobs available. So the way for me to be able to find them is going in, divulging into where they're at, seeing these kind of cultural hubs that exist and engulfing myself in them. And I feel like definitely in terms of getting lost to find myself, yeah, I did a large part of that in my cumulative years of growing up. Um, and I feel like that's kind of what you do as a youngster anyway. Music, nightlife, fashion, they all create an
Intersect.
assimilation of you, you know?
They all
And then
intersect.
you begin to find a tribe, you begin to find yourself, you begin to find the people that you want to be around, you begin to understand how those social situations and stances work. So I feel like that was a large, huge part of my upbringing was finding that. It was cultivating that. It was being like, this is my tribe. This is where I belong. This is who I should be around. This is the people that are inspiring me. And
Mm.
that came largely a large part of life. It really did.
So we moved from talking about. Let's move from talking about in a round. Let's talk about
Yeah.
a little bit more about our lived experiences. So we
Right.
both had kind of very unconventional university experiences.
Yeah.
While I'm
Yeah.
still suffering from the unconventional university experience
Yeah.
shit. But do you, and you also talked about how recessions impact um,
Cultivation and innovation,
your
the
cultivation
job,
and
and
your
to
innovation.
trying to find your path in a world that, saying you can't have a path right now.
Because
Absolutely.
it's never going to get harder than what the last hardest thing was.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a weird position to be in because you both want to do that thing that you've dreamt of doing, so music production. But there isn't,
Mm-hmm.
as so far, a music production role cut out for you.
Mm-hmm.
You need to make
Mm-hmm.
yourself that. How does that come
Yeah,
about?
so
Because you went off and studied music production at university,
I did. Yeah, I
and
did proper music in media production. Um, okay, so my reason for going to uni were two things. Firstly, as an African in an African household, I'm sure you know you're either a lawyer, a doctor, or a disappointment. Period. Right?
hmm,
So the way my mother combated that was, okay, I don't want you to be a disappointment. I'll prefer you to do something that you enjoy. What do you want to do? And I said, I want to do music. She was like, all right, cool. As long as you don't do it in London. So I didn't have the option of being able to cultivate myself within this London scene, which I wish I did. But ultimately, it was actually a needed experience because nothing teaches you how to adult more and quickly than being completely and utterly without all kind of comfort.
hmm.
So I think that was really, really important. Beyond that, I guess my unique experience was the fact that I got kicked out in my third year, I believe. It's a very basic story. I just tried to sign myself onto a module, and I forwarded a signature to sign off. And they were like, "Well, this is not the lecture signature, so you can't do this year. Come back next year." And within that year, obviously panicking and being like, "What the hell am I going to do?" It's 2011. I remember it like it was yesterday.
Which is a
In
year
that
that
year,
I
in
passed
that panic,
university.
I was like, okay, I need to create something for myself. And through that, I created House of Lux. And the person who gave me the opportunity to create House of Lux was a good friend who we spoke about, Errol Salvador.
Yeah.
And he was the one who kind of allowed me and opened a lot. Because I had a lot of friends and a lot of people that I knew, but I didn't necessarily know how to not ultimately use my contacts, but
How to,
linking with them that was beneficial.
yeah. But that's the
And
transition period. You
it
have
is.
to
And it's
kiss a
also having
lot,
the collateral to invite them into something. I didn't have anything at that time.
because you have to kiss a lot of frogs before you get to that point. It's
Yeah.
almost
But
like
you also
planning a
have to
date.
have something that people want. Do you know?
And you have to have something that people want. Ultimately, that is important.
Yeah. And at that time, I believe W Hotel opened in July. And by October, I had my own weekly Thursday.
Thursday has become a real night, not just because of your machinations, but
Right. Yeah.
Thursday has become the new Monday. No, Thursday has become the new Friday. I remember a time where people would just, you know, end up not going to work on a Friday, purposely, every week, but because they were out on Thursdays and no one was out on a Friday anymore. But I don't know if that was just creatives.
Mm. Guys, can I just ask, can you all hear us clearly? Can somebody let us know?
Because I can hear I know that mine is good.
If anything, I might just have to get headphones.
I think it might be best if you put your headphones in because it's gonna,
Right.
otherwise
Right.
it's gonna be a bit muffled. But we can walk and talk. We can walk and
We
talk.
can. We can walk and talk. I'm always multitasking. So, actually, Eduardo, I've got a question for you.
Go.
What was one of the evenings or one of the parties that I invited you to that I clearly, or the first one that you got invited to? And by who? How did you?
By whom was I invited to one of your parties? Oh my god. I don't want to mention names, but
Yeah.
we have a mutual friend,
Yeah.
had a mutual friend
Yeah.
who invited
Tani?
me to meet you
Yeah.
by accident on just like a night out. They were
Yeah.
a fashion and I think media studies student.
Yes. I'm
Right?
guessing, I think it was, if I remember correctly, it was Tani.
Tali,
Tani
maybe, but
Mitra?
No, it wasn't even
No?
either of them. I remember. Do you remember Sharma Anwar?
I do remember Sharma Anwar. It was Sharma.
Yeah. So
Sharma and his sister. I remember Sharma.
yes, Sharma and her sister.
Yeah.
You're completely dark now, which is
I know.
even
Give me
better.
2 seconds. Pause. I'll be right
But
back.
I'll tell the story of how I met George.
Do. Yes,
So
please do.
um, on one of our on one of my random nights out, I ran into an old school friend who wasn't even a school friend. She was friend from the school time. I don't even know how to explain it. Outside of school, but we kind of grew up together, and we were just sussing each other out, too creative, trying to make a thing happen. And we always like make things happen. So we went out to, I think it was the W at that time. We went
It
out to
was,
the
yeah.
W, and
No, I believe it was library. Was it W that you met me first, or was it library?
it was at the W. Then we moved to the library.
Right.
So we started off at the W Hotel. So probably in the same year that he got kicked out
Mhm.
temporarily, and I
Mhm.
was in my second year of university.
Yeah.
So that was 2012.
Yeah.
That's when we met.
Yeah. I started W in 2011.
This is a lot better. This is a lot better.
Is it? All right. Great.
Yes.
Awesome.
Because you start, and then we moved on to the library, which became my
Yeah.
main stomping ground until it closed in
It
January.
did. It did. It did. So library is a funny thing. The owner of library, Ronald Madara, he's a good mentor of mine. I met him. I opened his first venue in 2012, and it was above a sushi shop.
Mm-hmm.
And I hosted Tomorrow Magazine's first ever magazine launch party with Oliver Proudlock from Made in Chelsea. And it was so funny because what I would usually do to create events and to create a night, I would usually approach a magazine or an artist or a brand of any sort and be like, do you guys want to collaborate? Would you want to use this space and do something? And that's a lot of the time. I would basically try to work smart as opposed to working hard, because being a promoter is exhausting, and having five, six, 700 people in your phone, at least
Constantly
100 of them
bothering you.
calling you constantly to get them into the club at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the morning is just ridiculous. So the best way I kind of did it was like let the brands do the work, and then I just reap the benefits from the venue and from the brand. And that was a little trick that I kind of allowed myself to use.
Mm. Wow, that makes a lot of sense. So
Yeah.
moving from the university experience, and now we're moving on to your sort of, you've graduated, now you're out of
Yeah.
university.
Yeah.
What are you doing now? This, not like, I'm not saying what are you doing now, as in now in
I
your
think
life.
like in 2000, so
After you graduate.
I graduated in 2013. By that point, I had spent 2 years at W. I'd open up 3 venues. Um, and I pretty much did that within the 2 years of one being kicked out of uni and then being back at uni and doing both at the same time. Um, and in 2013, I just kind of was pretty much over it. I was like, this industry is really vapid and it's exhausting, and I want to actually have a skill within this industry. Because by that point, I still necessarily wasn't taken seriously as somebody who really is doing events business development. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's realistically what the role was then, but nobody saw it as that. They just saw it as, oh, you just do parties. Well, no, there's a lot that goes into organizing a launch party for a magazine or for a brand,
Mm.
or doing a fashion week presentation, or et cetera, et cetera. So by that point, I got really, really over and done with the vapidness of it, and I wanted to actually have a skill within it. And I kind of was always interested in festivals. Didn't really care to go to them, but I always cared to understand how the back end worked and the finances worked, more importantly.
Mm-hmm.
So in that time, I started working for Festival. I got a
Mm.
job with Festival to produce a area for teenagers. So a festival within a festival. And that gave me the producer experience, the creative producer experience, the title of a producer. Um, and yeah, that's what I did pretty much straight after I graduated. So I
Mm-hmm.
was top and tailing with that with music and trying to work beyond my creative capacity and doing other things. I wanted to get more into styling. I wanted to get more into fashion. I wanted to actually use all the people that I had met within nightlife at W Hotel, at one of the hottest venues of the time, and actually progress myself through all of these contacts I had met. The only reason why I've got
Let's
any,
discuss that. Let's discuss
yeah,
that again.
yeah, go on,
For the ones that don't understand it in the back
yeah,
of the room, why is
yeah.
nightlife important? Because it can teach you
It's
skills.
essential. It's a central focus hub for all creatives.
That's a
As a
finishing
creative, we
school. It's like
all
a
have
finishing school.
yeah, it is a finishing school. As creatives, we all have ad hoc times that we work. We're not all in the same place at the same time to network. Do you know what I mean? We don't go to networking conventions. You either meet people on the job or you meet people after the job. And after the job is when you go into the hottest club of wherever it is. Not to say it's the most needed thing or that there aren't ways to shift around it. Let's face it, hospitality is 4% of the UK GDP.
Yeah,
So in their mind, they
just
can get rid of the
can't kill it.
4% and let it shift. Exactly. But for me and for creatives like me, what do you do after a shoot? You try during fashion week, you go into a fashion party. There you meet other photographers, you meet models, you meet stylists, you meet PR, you meet buyers. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
The
So
chat, the
this,
chat is about nightlife. So Charlie's just asked a question, and she's somebody who I've worked really closely with in nightlife. She also ran Scotch of St James, if I remember, and Trailer Happiness. So hi, Charlie.
I
She
think
is
I've been
somebody
to
who,
Scotch when she ran it. When you
yeah,
took us, that was a crazy night.
yes, I remember one of the nights that I took you there actually discussing nightlife.
So welcome, Charlie. So going back to the conversation, it's like a finishing school, and
Yes,
the reason why that's important is because it allows you to meet people that you wouldn't otherwise have met, but at the same time, it propels you forward
yeah,
because
it's the starting school of not necessarily hustling, but networking.
networking. That's where we wanted to get to. The
It's really the
importance
starting
of
school of it.
networking, being well
Yeah.
networked, is
hmm
something that happens naturally, and I don't think should be forced.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
when it comes to networking, you have to really remember that you're creating a relationship that you can later on leverage,
hmm
but you never know when is the right time to leverage that relationship.
hmm
So attending a party may seem frivolous and may seem something completely, how can I put it? Oh, why would you do that? You
Yeah.
know,
Unneeded.
unneeded. And it
Mm.
has to be organic. You're right, Charlie. It has to be organic. It has to be something that the other person doesn't find completely stifling,
Yeah.
because you can be that. We've all done it. We have all been that overbearing networker.
Yeah.
But it's
Well,
about
that's when it's
becoming
agenda ridden, and it should never really come with an agenda. If you really want to try to formulate a real connection with somebody who, especially you want to work with, they need to know that there's some sort of altruistic nature there. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
Otherwise, it's just like you're just seeing through somebody else's agenda,
I
which
have
you
so
kind
many
of come
books in
across a
my head.
lot in life. You also do come across a lot of that in nightlife. You do find people who socially want to use you.
Social using is a very good term, because it does happen, and you have to be
Mm.
able to weed out the wheat from the chaff, and you can usually
hmm
smell them out, because they
hmm
usually pop up at the most unexpected of times
Yeah.
with the most stupid request, and then you're like,
Yeah.
where did this come from?
especially if it doesn't equate to you giving me anything either. So where's the ratio of that social exchange? You know what I
There
mean?
isn't any. I was reading a book on social norms and it said
Yeah,
the following: you need to have capital. Either you have youth on your side, so the person wants to gain
yeah,
the new blood,
yeah,
the
yeah.
injection of new blood, or you have something a little bit more, how can I put it? You have capital, or
Social
you have
capital
status.
is
Social capital
not
is
a
actually
joke. Unfortunately, we all deal in social capital. I don't care what game you're using, what game you're playing in, i.e., your industry, your field, whatever you want, but it's something that we all do. And the way nightlife works, especially with social capital, is that you have a food chain.
yeah.
Ultimately, everybody is trying to work smart as opposed to working hard because it's nightlife. It's hospitality. It's already the work in itself is exhausting, and you're dealing with people and egos all the time. So when it comes to that kind of social capital, social currency, especially when it comes to parties and um, events and popular events and dealing with popular brands, people are always trying to be at the top of what that said food chain is. Um, And it's so funny because we try to act like, we try to diminish it, especially when you come from a place of privilege. You want to diminish that and be like, ugh, why are these people trying to be such social climbers and social ladders?
Social climbing is
Well,
always an interesting statement
yeah.
to have like, oh, I remember when I was at university, I was put on a
Mm,
social climbers table.
mm, And
And
the
I
thing is,
looked
with
at
social
them and I
climbing,
was
the only
like,
people,
oh my God, I'm a social climber because I'm here to network.
yeah.
What is the
But I feel like the only people that ever give you that title always come from a place of privilege already. Do you know what I mean?
that's
I
the
don't
thing.
see social climbing isn't social climbing. Social climbing is trying to up your well, yeah, it's
Game.
social climbing. It's upping your social network. It's upping your social currency. But as to whether it's a negative, I don't know about that one.
I
I
don't
don't
think it
know.
is. I don't there is no way of you meet so many people who have privileged backgrounds and their
Yeah,
privilege comes from their social capital rather
yeah.
than how much money they actually have in the bank.
Facts and facts again.
So
Facts and
on the
facts again.
outside, you look at people and you think, goodness,
And just to add to that point, how did you weed them out? How were you able to weed out those who come from privilege and those who come from a different kind of class system where it was just money that allowed them to speak? I found that out in nightlife. I didn't find that out in a classroom.
you wouldn't. You wouldn't. There's just no way. I would say there's no way of doing it. Like, I went to one of the stupidly white test kind of not modules, but courses in my
Yeah,
university. I think we
yeah,
could put the amount of BME, or which is the wrong term now, black, minority,
mm,
ethnic, whatever you want to put it
yeah.
as.
I know what you're saying.
Uh, um, Quadrant was like 99% was white, and we were the 10%. And you could count
Hmm.
us in each and every class. We were the 10%. And there was 10
Hmm.
of us, really, and in a class of, what, 150 undergrads?
Yeah,
And a lot of them had the privilege of going
yeah,
to very private schools.
yeah.
And they already knew how to network. They already knew how to internetwork themselves.
Because those
But,
social studies are taught within those private schools. And
exactly,
what's really interesting on that point is that um, those,
soft
okay,
skills.
yeah, those soft skills are, we don't obviously get them a lot within particular class systems that we're built to, right? So a lot of the time you cultivating them skills, either you do that at work or you do that when you are trying to present yourself as somebody who's interesting, who's trying to meet interesting people. Um,
Hmm.
if that's trying to get into a tribe that you believe is you belong to, or whatever the reason is, whatever the interest is, a large part of that is cultivated within those spaces
Environments.
and environments. Absolutely. Um, it's funny because what we're largely talking about is culture,
Yeah.
and I find that the time that we're in and the question of where culture is moving to, where society is moving to, like what is it?
You move on the conversation so beautifully. Um,
Thank you. Always
it,
interlinking.
it,
Um,
it is a continuity announcement
it is.
that you need to have. Thanks for that reminder. Let's talk about culture. What is the state
Yeah.
of our current culture? So we're bringing up the networking bit because that kind of
Yeah.
fixes what you've been doing up till now.
Yeah. Yeah.
That fixes what you've been doing in terms of work.
Yeah.
Because we kind of guess there was a snowball effect from that point, and I wanted to
Yeah. I
at
was
that
really,
side
really
at the
lucky.
beginning.
I was really, really lucky. I had from, like I said, being in the hottest venue at the time, upping my social currency, being able to work with so many different creatives there, I was able to touch on every talent and every interest that I had, any kind of creative interest that I had. I got to release music. I got to be a featured artist. I got to style Little Mix and Jennifer Hudson and, you know, host dinner for Vivienne Westwood. I got to do a lot from the social currency of meeting people in the hottest venue at the time there.
Mm.
Um, which I guess is to link into what I was going to say about culture and currency. I guess it's worrying now that those relationships aren't going to be able to be built and cultivated in the same way. Not to say that they won't be, not to say that they can't. It's just generationally, it's always created
In
innovation
those
through.
environments, it's always
Mm,
created in those environments because you
mm,
realize that when you go out on a night out, people usually
yeah,
say, "Oh, do you go to pool?
yeah,
Are you on the pool?" Like
yeah.
that's the usual kind of leitmotif
I agree.
for a night out.
I
And
absolutely
they
agree.
don't really get why creatives go out so much. Why do creatives go out
Yeah,
every night of the week?
we've already answered that. We've already answered that.
We've answered that.
It's
But
the
let's
it's this cultural stomping ground.
it's a cultural stomping ground, but what is culture? Give me your definition of culture.
Oh, you know what culture is. Culture is what moves us, what shapes us. It's what we create our identities around. That's
And
what culture
identity
is.
is what we all strive to
Achieve and
achieve.
have a clear identity card.
Hence why this is an important cup.
Hello? 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 We already know what culture is. Culture is trying to identify yourself, see where you fit in, see what your tribe is, see how you're supposed to move and shake in this world. It's shaping who you are. That's your culture. That's what culture is. To me, personally, if you're talking about culture in a wider context of what is British culture, what is nightlife culture, then there are different
Variegation.
categories and variegations to that. Absolutely.
Okay, let's move
What?
on and
So,
discuss what's going on now. So we've kind of started touching it on a little bit, and
mm,
we've decided to say that culture has started to change.
hmm
Culture is going through, I think, a deep freeze moment.
it is. It is. It's. I think it's being forced to, like everybody else, to halt. Um, I don't know how you feel about being stuck, but I am somebody who stuck isn't a place I ever can choose and can be in. And I think
I'm gonna be
everyone
very. You've asked a question, so I need to answer it.
gone.
How do I feel about being stuck?
Mm,
COVID-19 has been a better advance for my career
hmm
currently than all the
hmm
time I've spent networking. Do you know why? Working smart instead of working hard. I managed
Absolutely.
to sort myself out a show, a
Yeah.
program of events
Yeah.
virtually. So it's
Yeah.
about pivoting and showing your worth to the community at these
Absolutely.
times. And it's
Absolutely.
not just about me. I've spoken to other people about it.
Yeah.
And it gives you the freedom because everyone else is still ruminating and pausing. The big pause is having an effect. Everyone's ruminating and thinking about the future. You have to, at that time, look
Yeah.
at yourself and say, I'm going to actually do something with this.
Yeah.
Whatever comes from it will come from
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think, we're not social therapists. I'm not going to sit here and give people advice on what they should do in this time. But I think what it allowed me to do, a large part of my being out here in these streets was actually enabling and helping other people. Do you know what I mean? It was being either a vibes mascot for other people. It was always making sure that I was gaining currency by being the social currency. Does that make any
Exactly.
sense? I didn't realize that
Riding on the coattail. The
I
coattail.
literally, and I didn't realize that for a very long part of that. Well, I did. That's otherwise I wouldn't have stepped away from it for as long as I did, and I did. I started to go back into it for me having 150% full control, which is great. But I find doing this pause because a lot of people are like, George, what are you going to do now? You can't do events. You can't. I'm like, yeah, there's a
Yes, you
thousand and other.
can. Yes, you
Of course I can, but I
absolutely.
think the main thing is that my interest actually didn't stem from nightlife. It stemmed from people. It stemmed from connectivity. It stemmed from connection. How can I do what I love, which is connecting with people, enabling them and helping them to enable me without doing it in a space and an environment that has to be surrounded by what nightlife is. And I think that was the interesting challenge for me.
I think Nightlives were the original app. Nightlives was the original app where you could go and browse if you wanted to like lose yourself in all sorts of nefarious activities. You could lose yourself in those. Like we can't hide how nightlife can lead you down those sultry paths.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, it can be used as like an app. It can hack your life. It can hack your life in the sense that you understand and you broaden your idea of what it is that you are
through identity building. And that happens through finding your tribe, finding the kind of music, the fashion, the people that you want to be around. So I do find it's going to be very, very difficult for the generation outside of this I mean, this happens every fucking 20 years anyway. Generationally, we change. So I'm sure they will find different varying ways, but
George,
I do,
just to stop you on that note before we start ruminating on that too heavily, we forgot about social media. How has social media impacted your networking, your practice so far? Because technology is a friend to many of us in trying to bridge that.
Yeah. I would say the original. Okay, so when social media originally started, it enabled me to know who people were and what they did. Because let's face it, if you're in a situation that you're proud of, you're going to scream it from the rooftops. And a large part of what I did was knowing who people are, what people do, and how that could be for a mutual benefit. So in that case, at the beginning of my career, social media was super important. Super important. After a while, it kind of just allowed me to be a little too bait and too focused on the things that don't actually matter, i.e., are people actually going to come to this event because I've got 100 people coming through, but from doing this experience, only 30 people are going to show up. It became a numbers game, and I didn't like that. I didn't take to that very well.
Rather than the quality of what you are actually producing.
It wasn't the quality. Yeah, it wasn't the quality of what I was producing. It was the numbers game, and that feeds back into the nightlife industry of them wanting a particular quality, but also quantity. Do you know what I mean?
They always want a particular, but they don't realize that the quality has to be nurtured. from the beginning, so
And
you start learning
absolutely,
the quality. It's like the Instagram app itself.
yeah.
I read No Filter this week.
Mm,
The story of Instagram, guys, you have to read it. It's
yeah.
absolutely fascinating. All the turns and twists because it's a similar story to what we're telling currently.
Yeah.
Nightlife is the original app, guys.
Yeah, it is. It really is. I think what's an interesting point to add to that was I remember a club, and a lot of people probably know it here as well. It was called Whiskey Mist. And that place used marketing and branding and social media more and made it seem like it was such an incredible evening to lose or find yourself than it was actually an experience of a collective ideal and energy and a vibe that, you know, can transcend you into whatever version of yourself that you want it to be. That's how they advertise themselves through social media. And I think that's one of the smartest things that a lot of promoters and a lot of venues and a lot of general managers abused during that time. And now we're in this time as to where, let's
They're
face it,
suffering.
socially, well, of course it's going to suffer because right now people do not care. That disparity of wealth is so clear that people are now no longer trying to adhere to or latch onto this class system, this hierarchy, this shiny diamond of having a membership to a particular place. Remember how we were discussing the membership programs within particular places and
Yeah.
being a part of a members club, and that being, this is literally just 5 years ago, it's not even 3 years ago, and how that was some sort of added social currency. No, added social currency, having a membership,
yeah,
you
added
know?
social currency, yeah.
Now we're in a place as to where that isn't a thing anymore because people fundamentally do not and cannot care. It's not important anymore. And I
I'm
think
laughing
that was
so
needed.
hard at what you're saying inside because I got sent an email from one of the most, how can I put it, shishi clubs in London.
Yeah.
And you know they're currently now offering a £30 a month membership.
Yeah. Ridiculous, isn't it?
It is
Ridiculous.
So it goes to show you don't need to be paying £1,500 plus
You never
per month.
did. It was the smartest business plan of all business plans because you're selling a lifestyle. That's what you're selling.
An
Nightlife
idea.
was selling a lifestyle. It was ideals and lifestyles. They weren't real. There was nothing real about it. You're not going to become a richer, better human being for having a membership to Soho House.
You
And the
won't.
fact that we sold that as a dream, I find hilarious in that no longer exists, that no longer is a thing. That's not going to exist anymore. Yes, the elitist class system maybe would want that to separate from themselves, but that's all they've ever wanted to do, really, separate them from the
I'm
rest
not
of us.
joking. If you want me to link you guys up afterwards, come onto my DMs. I'll show you my receipts. And you know what? I got the membership.
Why not? Why not? Why not? It's 30 quid. Why not? So Charlie said something. She said Scotch, and I remember whoever went to Scotch of St. James, it was a great place. Scotch never used social media, and it was one of their selling points. And I remember it was because, if I remember correctly, Charlie, it's because they had a license till 6 a.m. So their whole selling point was the fact that they had a license till 6 a.m. They kept the riffraff away. It didn't. Only those who knew. And you had to go through Miss Charlie to get in.
And I loved it because it was an experience.
It was. Only if you knew, you knew. If you didn't know, then you didn't know. I mean, it's as simple as
Then
that.
that's your own business if you didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
Certain things you don't need to know about.
Exactly.
But just going through our talking points, making sure that I'm hitting all the notes. The snowball effect is important. Community is something that we haven't spoken about, and I've been pointing to it all the while as we've been doing the live.
Yes. Okay, so to touch upon the community, I have to touch upon how I started out again. And a large part of that was me adding, so to link in social media, a large part of that was adding anybody who I thought was interesting or cool on social media, who was within the arts world, within the creative world, within the music world, and just being like, oh, I want to follow them and see what they're doing and see what they're up to. Almost trying to create my own community, my own tribe, without knowing these people for the day to when I would have that social currency to have something to sell, right?
Mm-hmm.
So again, the year is 2011. I had, you know, added all of these incredible creatives who I was really interested in meeting, and El Sabadosh kind of was able to introduce me to all of those people and formulate the tribe and the community that I thought I belonged to, that I did belong to, that I knew I belonged to. And again, that happened all through nightlife. I met every single one of those people that I had added on social media who was a stylist, DJ, a singer, a designer, a buyer, somebody in PR. All of these people that I had added on social media, usually on Facebook at the time, I was able to meet in nightlife. And then through all of those connections and friendships, I was actually able to get jobs out of them and work out of them. You think I would, somebody like me who grew up in...
Do you think that you were one of the original influencers?
I hate to say it. I would hate to say it because I feel like an influencer, again, let's face it, like you said, through generational strife creates innovation, right?
Yeah.
So I think back in my day, 10 years ago, no, really, let's be honest, 12 years ago when I started, influencer wasn't a thing. In 2008, there was no such a thing as an influencer. That kind of came around 2011, 2012. All my friends have been like, yes. Okay, I would accept it, but I can't necessarily say I am because I was never part of that generation. They created the generation of influencers was created just after me. Does that make sense?
Let's be honest, Mr. I think you're one of the original influencers, but again, if we're using the current language and retrofitting it to beforehand, promoters were original influencers.
They were
gatekeepers.
They were gatekeepers to culture.
Wearing, and you'd be like, oh my god, I want to dress like that promoter. I want to be like the promoter.
Yeah.
And that's how it works, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It's somebody who had a social currency and somebody who, was trying to always get the latest garms and work with the latest people within fashion. And yes, technically, I'm one of the original influencers, but I'll never give myself that title. It's too cringy.
Okay, we have 5 minutes to go.
Yeah.
And I always like to say, do you want to extend the chat for a little bit longer?
Always, yeah. I love talking to you.
And then because we can get into the other issues, because I think sometimes in the first hour it's the only time when you really start to lose the nerves, you understand the platform, then you can move on.
Absolutely.
So we can get into the intersectional realities.
Absolutely.
Afterwards.
Absolutely.
But in this section, I like to always do this. What are you reading currently?
Right now, I do, yeah. Right now, what's the book that I have in my bag? It's just about African history and how greed and the chase for the African dollar and the African right of land is. But I haven't actually really gotten into it. I've only started on the introduction, to be honest. But yeah, that's what I'm currently reading now. It's basically about Pan-Africanism and the chase for Africa. That's what it is.
Oh, nice. Tell me about what you read informally, like magazines that you keep up with.
Oh, God.
That's there's always a book, and then there's what you read.
Yeah. I feel like culturally right now, my kind of reading and my thirst for knowledge has shifted. My diet right now is on pause. It's like there's too much. I need to reshift my focus into something else. So right now, I'm actually trying to keep very, very low key on the absorbing of information.
But you must read something.
No. No.
No damn horoscopes.
Nope.
What are you watching?
Nope. I just finished a show called P-Valley, which is very interesting. It deals with the intersectional issues of being Black in south of Mississippi, but they do it all, and all their dealings are within a strip club. I always find like marginalized groups in really weird and intricate settings as interesting TV for me. I don't really care for much drama or miniseries, especially if there's nobody black or
You
queer in
got
it.
me
I don't care.
onto Pause? Not Pause. What's that name? What's the name of that show? Us. Pose.
Pose. Oh, Pose is so good.
You got me onto Pose, and I was so happy with it.
So good. Pose is, again, like I said, if it doesn't deal with intersectional, marginalized groups, especially who deal with the black queer community, I'm kind of not really investing my time in it, to be honest.
Mm.
That's just where I'm at with my team. So again, that's probably why I'm being very kept at being informed about certain things, because there's a particular perspective that I now care for and that I want to hear from. Yeah.
Okay. The live has not come to an end. I'm going to end this one because we're going to get kicked out
Okay.
soon. So I'm
Okay.
trying to like keep it neat and sexy
Yeah.
and be able to
Yeah.
save it. And then
Shall we have
look
a
back
quick 10-minute break?
which we will do. We'll come back in
Awesome.
about 10 minutes time. See you guys in a bit.
Bye, guys. Thanks for joining.
Bye.